My experience, strength, and hope is one involving alcoholism. I came out of a family that had alcoholism, although I did not know it. So when I was younger, when I was a teenager, the social life of my family was such that on the weekends, my parents partied, and in the evening, my dad was a builder. At 5 o'clock at night, he would drink a beer, or 2 or 3. What I didn't know was that my father's father was an alcoholic, and he drank every day, and he drank a lot. The memories that I have of him were that when I walked into his house, it smelled like beer and pretzels. So it's sort of like you have those sensory memories. Sometimes when you don't have regular memories, you have sensory memories, and that was one of my grandfather. And my mother's father was Irish Catholic, bookie, salesman, and he was, when he was active in drinking, he was a raging alcoholic. And he got sober in 1948. And he went from, he lived in Plainfield, and he started the meetings in the Plainfield, Montclair, Newark areas. And I knew him as a sober man. And my grandmother, years and years and years later, she would tell me stories about those meetings. And she told me stories about Lois and Bill. And every time I hear, I don't know you all, but I know you all, because you said the 12 steps, and I keep thinking, what would it be like in my world if I didn't know about the 12 steps? Where would I be? And for sure I would be dead. My first experience with alcohol was when I was 15 years old. I was on vacation. I was up in northern New Jersey. I was on a pond, and in the middle of the pond was an island. And all the people that I was with, they were all partying. And I discovered Strawberry Boone's Farm wine. And at that point in time in my life, being 15, I thought everything was going really well in my life. And the second that I drank this stuff, my system started to glow or something. And I thought to myself, why didn't anybody tell me about this? Why didn't anybody tell me I could feel like this? What has happened? Why did they lie to me? They withheld this information that I could feel this glow or this thing where I was okay, instantly. And to the best of my knowledge, what happened to me that evening was that there wasn't enough in the bottle, so I drank as much as I possibly could drink. And this island had a cliff off the side of it. And I was a pretty good swimmer, and I was pretty fearless in those days. And I remember having the thought that I should jump, just so I could fly. Those thoughts started to happen. I didn't do it, but I remember clearly thinking about it. As the night went on, I thought I was smart and beautiful and attractive and all these different personality things that I didn't realize I didn't have, I had in that moment. And I know that I had to get in a rowboat. I know I had to row back to the shore. I know I had to walk 2 miles to my parents' home. I know I had to walk up, their house was on a cliff. I had to walk up all these stairs and get into the bed. I don't remember a thing. Nothing. Except waking up in the morning. When I woke up, the room was going like this. And I got very sick. I didn't put the two together that it was alcohol and sickness. I thought it was just that I was violently ill, and being a little drama queen, I said, please take me to the hospital, I'm dying. My father could smell the alcohol, and he said, did you drink last night? I said, oh yeah, take me to the hospital. And he said, oh no, you're not going. And I thought, oh, I feel so terrible, and I just kept getting sick. And he said, when you drink too much, this is what happens. Don't drink, just don't drink. And I had a lot of things going on as a kid, so I just listened to him. But when I hit 18, it was legal in the state of New Jersey to drink. And I started to hang out with people that just loved to party, more than me. And so at that time, it was the end of the beginning of the 70s, the end of the 60s, and I had an afro, and I smoked pot, and I did some drugs, but my drug of choice was alcohol. And by the time I was 21, I was drinking straight scotch, no ice, and I was working in New York City. I was living in Staten Island, and I had to take the bus to the ferry to walk downtown to where I was working, and I would have anxiety attacks because I guess I was going through some kind of withdrawal, and I would bring a paper bag with me onto the bus. Can you imagine? Here I am, this woman getting on a bus, my pocketbook in a paper bag, and what I would do is heave forward and breathe into the paper bag because I had anxiety attacks on the way to the ferry. And on the way to work, I wouldn't drink. But after work, or at lunch, if we went out to lunch, I always got drunk. And that took care of my afternoon. Or on the way back in the ferry, as soon as I started to get back on that ferry, I hit a little bottle of wine, I'd get on that ferry, and I was like thinking that I was in some kind of magical movie, standing on the side of the ferry, holding on and looking at the New York skyline, and then walking back to my apartment. I would fall asleep at 6:30 or 7 o'clock at night. I would get up at 10 o'clock at night, and I would go to the bar down in Stapleton. If anybody knows anything about Staten Island, Stapleton is not the kind of place you really want to be 10 to 3. And I ended up with a boyfriend who drank more than me, so of course I did not have a problem. He had a problem. And he was mistaken for John Belushi. He dressed up and acted like John Belushi, wore the judge's uniform in the bar and held court. It was really creative and really crazy. And I just loved that. I loved over-the-top, dramatic people. And I know when I got up in the morning, say after a night of doing that, I would have like terrible, terrible hangovers and vertigo and the paper bag thing. And I can't imagine what I smelled like because I was drinking this straight scotch. Had to be bad. So I realized that I was too young to be really living like this and that there might be something wrong, so I went to see a counselor, and the counselor said, oh, it's really great, you're here, you haven't lost anything, you still have your youth, what you need to do is go to AA. And I'm like, oh no, I don't. You know, the denial hit me like there was no tomorrow. The minute alcohol hit my lips, the effect of alcohol took over, and there was nothing on the planet that mattered more. I could have a conversation with you, but it really wouldn't matter what we were talking about, because what I was really thinking about was, when am I going to have my next drink? When is that going to happen? And how am I going to get there? So I left my Wall Street job and I went into the restaurant business. Guess why? Easy to get to, before and after, change up your schedules, don't have to worry about getting up in the morning, don't have to worry about hangovers, go ahead and have a little shot before you start the shift, cash flow. And I loved people, so I did pretty well in that business. So from the ages of 21 to 31, I tried to manage my alcoholism, which was impossible to do. I had the seed was planted that I was an alcoholic, but I tried everything possible to try and control the disease of addiction and deny it. I did not have the knowledge at that point in time that my one grandfather was in recovery. I only knew him as a sober man. No one talked about it. My younger brother Stephen got sober before me. They put him in a rehab, and he used to haunt me after he was in rehab, telling me that I too had a problem. And I would say arrogant things like, oh no, you're the guy that went to rehab. You're the guy with the problem. And he said, oh no, I'm better. I'm getting better. You're not. You need help. So that kind of thing happened. The split happened in my dialogues with people that I loved and people that were trying to help me. And it was really like Teflon. I didn't want to have anything to do with the reality of what was going on with me. And I was willing to jeopardize every primary relationship that I had to be able to stay close to the drink of alcohol. And I know this is Narnon, but I hope that in sharing my experience, strength, and hope, you can hear what happens with the active addict and how they start to think and how they just don't want to be honest. And when I give presentations, which I do across the state of New Jersey, I always talk about, if you have somebody who's talking to you and they're using, you are not talking to their soul, you are not talking to the inner person, you are talking to the drug that they're using, and they will lie to your face because that's just the way it goes down. So I was afraid to be real. I was afraid to be honest. I was afraid to know what it was like to be sober. And in that 10-year period of time, I moved 14 times. I got married and divorced. My life was like a roller coaster. I couldn't stay still. I was so frightened. And I just didn't know what really hit me. I would go to meetings. I would stand in the back of the room and look at everybody, and I would say, I don't belong here. No matter what, I could never identify. I always compared. When I was 31, I ended up pregnant and drinking, and I had a miscarriage from drinking too much. And the doctor said, you had something. He never said alcoholism, he never said you really need help, but he said you miscarried because of your use, or you're using. He used some very gentle way of saying it, but I know that it was because I drank a bottle of champagne one night and the next day. So 8 months after that, I got pregnant again. And I realized that in order for me to function as a human being and as a mother, if I didn't miscarry this time around, I was going to have to do something. So I started to take AA very seriously. And when I did get sober, I had an 8-month-old baby. I was married to a man who is still to this day using. And my life, I didn't have a car. I was bartending. My life was incredibly unmanageable, and I had about 10 women come around me and hold me together. And they taught me about the 12 steps. I was, at that point, willing to listen, because prior to that, I was extremely arrogant and really in denial. So with their help, I was able to start to raise myself as a human being through the 12 steps. And the 12 steps really gave me a blueprint, a design for living. And I had no clue how to do that in any way, shape, or form. Here I was responsible for an 8-month-old baby. I didn't know how I was going to be able to subsist. I didn't know how I was going to be able to do anything. But one day at a time, with the help of the people that were in the program, I found a way to be able to stay sober while I bartended for 2 years. My sponsor had 14 years, her best friend had been a waitress and a bartender, and she said, if she can do it, you can do it. If you have a problem in the middle of your shift, you pick up the phone and call her. And I said, yes, ma'am. But she had a lot of other suggestions to me that I was like, oh, no, not yes, ma'am, I can't do this, it's too difficult. But I did stay sober one day at a time, and I was able to raise this child, and I was able to find my way as a sober woman in this world without a lot of help. One day I came home and I had a friend from the program come over for lunch, and we opened up the refrigerator and I had a can of tuna fish in there besides baby food. So I cut up the tuna fish. We had tuna fish for lunch. I didn't think anything of it. 2 days later I came home. My cupboards were filled and my refrigerator was filled with food. You know, so there were those kinds of things that happened along the way where I just didn't know how the people in the program would be in terms of their generosity and their support. My life changed dramatically over the years. It was not easy. It was very, very, what did my sponsor say? She said, sobriety is not for the faint of heart. It is not for the faint of heart. Wanting to be sober, wanting to work the 12 steps is not for the faint of heart. It brings you to a place you just can never imagine because it's not part of our normal scripts for living. And what has happened to me over the years is I still go to meetings. I'll go to 3 meetings a week. My sobriety date is August 15th, 1985. I have not had a drink since that day, and I do the best I can in helping others because I believe in doing that. I will too stay sober. I never, ever, ever take for granted the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, the fellowship that exists, the 12 steps that we have in order to stay sober. I don't take it for granted. I was at a funeral this afternoon. This is not a disease that wants us to stay alive. It is a disease that wants us dead, so we have to be vigilant about our program. And I'm older, and my peers are older, And we have surgeries, and the doctors are not really understanding of those of us in recovery. When they go to prescribe a script, these days it takes a village to make sure that the individual is not prescribed an opiate-based drug. And I'm very vigilant about that. I'm vigilant about working with ASAM so that the doctors can educate the surgeons and the primary physicians that think it's okay to prescribe one for pain, which maybe is the case, but there has to be some more education out there than there is currently. So I kind of become an advocate, a recovery advocate, and I work in the field, and also work in a different way with different things that I love in life. I've learned how to have fun. I've learned how to give back to the community. My daughter is beautiful, healthy, fun, happy lady. And I'm very grateful for that experience. And I'm out there fighting along with all you. You know, this is something that we can't take lightly because it's not the thing to take lightly. This is life, and this is love, and this is what we've got to do in order to help others. So I hope that in my little bit of a story I was able to help with experience, strength, and hope. And this is really an honor to be able to speak at my first Nar-Anon meeting. Thank you all very much.